revealed, a homeless woman's unexpected collapse sparks an incredible transformation in a cold-hearted CO. Caroline's world was icy and unforgiving as she navigated the concrete maze of downtown Denver, her mind steadily spiraling into shadows of despair. Once a vibrant teacher, she now scavenged in the corporate park for the remnants of discarded lunches, apple cores, leftover sandwiches, trying to mask her hunger with the debris of other people's waste. The bitter winter air bit at her cheeks, each gust stinging like a reminder that she was forgotten. All she wanted was a better life for her son, Matteo, but those ambitions felt like distant stars flickering just out of reach. As she stepped closer to a glint of foil in the trash, the weakness in her legs unfurled like a wilted flower in frost. Dizziness swept over her, spiraling her thoughts into a chaotic mess of panic and defeat. The ground rushed to greet her as her body crumpled against the harsh pavement. In an instant, the bustling world around her paused, a mixture of gasps and indifference swirling like candy wrappers in the wind. She lay there, mind racing, heart pounding with shame. What would Matteo think if he saw her like this? Lying helpless on the cold concrete? The shame gnawed at her insides, a betrayal to the ideals she once fought to instill in her students: resilience, ambition, hope. But now, those principles felt like frail whispers in a storm of scorching reality. Meanwhile, Alex, known for his relentless climb to success, exited the gleaming high-rise that stood tall like a monument to privilege. He barely saw her, just a figure clinging to survival in his periphery, before the collapse drew him in like a moth to flame. What was it about her that made him feel the familiar stirrings of guilt? He barely recognized them. Could he really care? His heart, honed to ambition's edge, cracked slightly as he rushed to her side. "Someone call 911!" he shouted, cradling her head as she lay there, cold and frayed. His world of power and success felt a million miles away, and in that moment, beneath her weary exterior, he felt her pain ripple through him. He had never lifted a finger for anyone but himself, something rearranged within. But why? Why was this homeless woman triggering a response from him, igniting long-buried compassion? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the sterile hospital room, Caroline's world blurred into something foreign, beset by machines and the scent of antiseptic that reminded her of classrooms where laughter had once filled the air. In those moments shared while she lay healing, Alex's mind whirled with her story of resilience and dreams long since buried. The soft light in her eyes stirred feelings he hadn't allowed himself to indulge, and there was a flicker of something darkening in the corners of his mind. His ambition had always been cutthroat, but could he alter the trajectory of his life for her, for teaching one of life's most noble callings? But the deeper he drew into her life, the more uncomfortable truths surfaced: questions about his own privilege, his blind ambitions, and the riddled path of injustice strangling people like Caroline. They weighed on his conscience, tightening like a noose, wrapping around his heart until it ached with the unsettling knowledge she'd carry the scars even if he helped her shine again. As Caroline gained strength, she drew power from the lessons embedded within her struggles, seeking to rise up through the grit that had once stolen her resolve. Yet, when cracks in Alex's polished existence emerged, clues about his own family viscerally tied to homelessness, his resolve began to waver. Could he truly redirect the tides of fate? Or would the burdens of their pasts forever confine them in the shadows they desperately sought to escape? The questions hung heavy in the air, unresolved, pulsing with a desperation that could not be ignored, leaving both of their futures teetering on a precarious edge. As the fluorescent lights flickered above, Caroline opened her eyes to a world that oscillated between her past and her present. The beeping machines around her felt like unwelcome intruders, reminding her of the life she had fallen from. Struggling to push through the haze of pain and confusion, she attempted to piece together the lost fragments of her identity. The frail body that once commanded a classroom now seemed foreign to her, reduced to a mere shadow of vitality. Each day brought a glimpse of normalcy. Familiar faces of nurses and doctors became fleeting companions as they tended to her needs. With every moment spent in their care, a quiet resilience began to burgeon within. She started asking questions. What's next for me? What can I do to reclaim the life I once had? They were tiny nudges toward a recovery she had not anticipated, but deep down, a flame began to flicker. However faint, a fight still lingered. In the evenings, Alex hovered at the edge of Caroline's world, a silent observer torn between his pursuit of success and the empathetic awakening she incited. His evenings emptied out onto the sterile chair beside her bed, eyes focused somewhere between his empire and her plight. Calculation and compassion warred within him, the battle shifting his priorities like tectonic plates. Could he truly transcend the cold calculations of his corporate life to save a single soul? One evening, fueled by a mix of urgency and curiosity, he spoke to her for the first time. Why did you become a teacher? The question hung in the air, charged with unspoken implications. As Caroline answered, describing her passion for igniting a love for learning in her students and the sacrifices she had made for them, Alex felt the dam within him began to let loose. The harsh reality that there was more to life than profit whispered through the room, as if acknowledging the battle of values raging within him. Most days I didn't just teach. I wanted to inspire them to dream bigger than their circumstances, she spoke softly, a spark igniting in her brown eyes as a cascade of memories played out. Alex tracked her words, aware that this woman, so close to defeat, was embodying lessons he had long since forgotten. As she shared a memory of a student who had overcome the odds, he realized their struggles, her struggles, intertwined with his own ambition's soulless trajectory. Doubt slithered into his thoughts. Was his tenacity in business blinding him to the real need in the world? Caroline had suddenly transformed from a stranger into a mirror reflecting all the ambition he had sacrificed at the altar of cold success. What if he could leverage his business acumen for something beyond himself? Could he guide her back onto her feet while redefining the impact of his own life? After Caroline was discharged, Alex found himself on the precipice of a daunting decision: offer her help directly or choose the comfortable route of keeping his distance. He became a shadow in the corridors of the hospital, pondering how to act. Each passing moment amplified the urgency of the choice he could no longer delay. The realization started to form, solidifying in his gut like a heavy stone. He could not keep burying himself in the mire of his ambition, while ignoring the profound connections life had to offer. But as the truth settled in, he faced the most challenging question of all. What sacrifices would he have to make to forge a path beyond the one he had taken for granted? Would he have the courage to dismantle the very empire he fought to build in order to help save a woman he barely knew? In that moment of reflection, the next step loomed ahead, cloaked in uncertainty, but pulsing with a promise of redemption for both of them. The delicate threads of their fates intertwined as the urgency to act crystallized around him. As Caroline began to reclaim her life little by little, she remained unaware of the storm brewing within Alex. The moment of truth was approaching. He had to decide if he was willing to reinterpret his life's purpose in service to another. The stakes were rising, and both would soon have to face the defining choices that would forever alter their paths. Would they find the courage to confront their own shadows, or would they slip further into the abyss of their pasts? As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a warm glow through Caroline's living room window, the once sterile landscape of recovery transformed into lively chaos. Each day felt like a narrative weaving together threads of triumph and uncertainty. It wasn't just the physical rehabilitation that tested her will. It was the emotional upheaval that threatened to tear apart the fabric of her newly found autonomy. Caroline had been home for only a week, yet each morning she woke with fresh determination. She had established a routine: morning stretches to regain her strength, afternoons spent journaling her emotions, and evenings focused on reconnecting with the world outside her walls. The small act of choosing meal ingredients, the aroma of brewing coffee, these were not just mundane tasks. They anchored her in reality, asserting her presence in a life she feared was slipping away. Yet self-doubt staked a claim in the corners of her mind. Was this really a beginning, or merely a pause in her inevitable decline? It was during one of these reflective afternoons that she opened her laptop for the first time, its keyboard feeling foreign yet inviting. Fingers hesitant, she began typing. Why did I teach? The question, a mantra, now echoed in her mind. Each keystroke prompted forgotten memories, exhilarating and painful. The thought of classroom discussions, the faces of eager students, and those moments of triumph when knowledge sparked a child's joy, breathed life into her narrative. The words came pouring out, unfurling a deeper understanding of her identity, revealing layers she had buried beneath fear and loss. Across town, Alex wrestled with his own evolution, each evening spent contemplating Caroline's influence over his decisions. The world of corporate growth and profit margins felt increasingly hollow in comparison to the vibrant stories of resilience he had glimpsed through her eyes. His dwindling sense of fulfillment weighed heavy on him, contrasting sharply against her burgeoning vitality. Suddenly, figures on spreadsheets paled in importance to the human connection he had been neglecting. Yet, fear of familial obligations and the expectations of colleagues tightened around him like a vice. In an impulsive act of will, Alex decided to call Caroline. He needed her perspective, her fire to reignite his own sense of purpose. Hey, how's it going? His voice barely matched his casual greeting, urgency dripped from his words. I'm trying to move forward, Caroline replied tentatively. Some days are easier than others, but I feel different. Different how? He pressed, intrigued by this uncharted territory of emotional honesty. I'm discovering layers of myself I forgot existed. This experience, terrifying as it's been, makes me want to teach again, to bridge those gaps that education often overlooks. Her words struck Alex with the weight of revelation. Instinctively, he realized he needed to help her. What if we could create something together? He asked, heart racing at the thought of a collaboration infused with passion and purpose. A community workshop for those who've lost their way, using storytelling to heal, just like you are now. A silence bubbled between them, brimming with potential and unspoken fears. Would this project serve as a redemption for both? What if it fails? She whispered, vulnerability breaking through. What if it doesn't? He countered, emboldened. With that question echoing in the air, an ambitious plan started to coil between them. They were linked by their challenges, ready to build something that could not only save Caroline but also redefine Alex's paradigm, showing him the true impact of connection. They would engage with those struggling and illustrate how fragmented lives could be stitched together through shared stories and experiences. As both began to prepare for this monumental journey, they stood at the edge of formidable choices. Would they truly venture into the unknown together, confronting challenges that lay ahead and redefining their future? In that moment, the stakes loomed larger than either had imagined, primed to alter everything they believed about themselves and the worlds they inhabited. Would they find what they were searching for together or succumb to the shadows of their insecurities? The morning light streamed through the window, illuminating Caroline's cluttered desk as she sat poised over her laptop, heart racing with anticipation. Each click of her fingers on the keyboard was a decision, a reaffirmation of her commitment to reclaim her voice. Doubt loomed, whispering insidiously in the background. What if her aspirations of teaching again crumbled under the weight of reality? She shook her head, dispelling the shadows, and forced herself to press on, drafting an outline for the workshop. She breathed deeply, envisioning the faces that might attend, weary yet hopeful, lost yet yearning for connection. The weight of her and Alex's intentions began pressing against her chest, an exhilarating blend of fear and excitement. This wasn't just about her healing, she would be a beacon of change for others. The first task was to solidify their vision. What would they teach? How could they engage those who felt discarded by society? Caroline imagined open discussions, moments when participants could share their stories openly, combining her experience with Alex's insights from the corporate world to create something truly unique. The thought of fostering vulnerability thrilled her. This might be the catalyst for her own growth. Meanwhile, Alex sat at his desk, grappling with apprehension. He rifled through spreadsheets absent-mindedly, but his mind was elsewhere, tethered to Caroline's spark. The idea of collaborating had ignited a fierce longing in him, a chance to extract meaning from his sterile corporate existence. Yet doubts tangled with excitement. Would their partnership mesh? Could he balance his day job and this new venture without jeopardizing either? Shoving aside his spreadsheets, he grabbed a notebook and began jotting down ideas. He envisioned building a structure where storytelling was central, a safe haven inviting those burdened by their past to step into the light. The words flowed, igniting a familiar fire within him, one he thought had extinguished long ago amidst the humdrum of financial targets. What once felt like a risk now seemed necessary, as if their collaboration might serve as proof of their combined strengths. Yet lurking beneath his resolve was the fear of judgment. Would others view his pivot into this emotionally open space as weakness? Returning to Caroline, a week had passed, and her days were now a series of intense reflections and progress. Each interaction she had emboldened neighbors. The regular cashier at the corner store added strands of confidence to her tapestry of recovery. Conversations transformed, morphing from mundane exchanges into vibrant dialogues about dreams and aspirations. She no longer saw herself as a victim of circumstance but as an author of her journey. The more connections she forged, the more she understood the importance of vulnerability. Yet hesitation remained. Finally acting on her driving ambition to teach felt monumental, but an internal voice echoed, failure was a potent specter. Would her emotional scars taint her ability to inspire others when she didn't feel whole herself? Caroline needed clarity. The next afternoon, she sat on her couch, pen in hand, pouring her thoughts into her journal. What if I don't measure up? She wrote, heart pounding. That fear felt familiar but alien, a relic from her previous life that she knew she had to confront head-on. As her pen captured these musings, her phone buzzed with a message from Alex. Can we meet tomorrow? I want to discuss a few ideas about the workshop. A surge of excitement coursed through her veins. This was at the moment to solidify their collaboration, to carve out a path that could either uplift or shatter her newfound goals. She pressed her pen hard against the page, underlining her next steps like a declaration. Embrace the unknown, no matter how terrifying it felt. As the sun began its descent, Caroline looked out the window, the world around her vibrant with possibility. The thought of merging her dreams with Alex stirred a deep sensation in her. Perhaps this partnership held the key to not just healing but transformation for both of them. But would it be enough to drown out the growing chorus of doubt that accompanied the thrill? As the last light faded from the sky, she couldn't shake the sense that tomorrow's meeting could change everything, ushering in a new era of connection and purpose, or lead to an inevitable confrontation with her fears. Would she be ready? Caroline awoke the next morning to the muffled sounds of the world rushing by outside her window. The sunlight streaked through the blinds, filling her modest apartment with a golden hue that felt both promising and intimidating. Today was the day. Today, her collaboration with Alex could become real, and every nerve in her body vibrated with excitement and dread. She moved through her morning routine with mechanical precision, her mind racing with self-imposed questions. What if their ideas weren't enough? What if they failed to connect with the very people they sought to help? As she sipped her coffee, the warmth enveloped her, a fleeting comfort amidst a tempest of anxiety. She forced herself to breathe deeply, willing her racing heart to settle. Arriving at the cafe where they would meet, Caroline spotted Alex already seated, scribbling in his notebook. He looked up as she approached, a bright smile flashing across his face that made her heart skip. Maybe their collaboration would truly be a shared journey. Hey! Glad you could make it, Alex said, gesturing to a chair across from him. Of course, she replied, forcing a smile but feeling the weight of her uncertainties. As they exchanged pleasantries, Caroline's mind drifted to the workshop goals they had discussed. What if we framed our workshop around stories of resilience? She suggested, the idea pouring out before she could second-guess it. We could invite participants to share their experiences of overcoming adversity. It could foster a sense of community. The words flowed, and she felt a glimmer of inspiration sparking within her. Alex nodded, his expression thoughtful. That's powerful. But how do we ensure everyone feels safe to share? Not everyone is ready to open up. Her throat tightened as she recognized the truth in his question. Maybe we could create a structure, an opening circle to establish trust, she proposed. Shared vulnerability set the tone for deep connections. As they delved deeper into their ideas, Caroline began to witness the potential that lay within her passion. Ideas flowed between them like a current, their energies merging, prompting her to expand on points she had previously kept quiet. Here was a dialogue rooted in possibility, potential, and shared visions, but amid the excitement, doubt lingered like a bitter aftertaste. "What if I can't deliver?" she blurted, a crack forming in her confident facade. "What if this workshop turns into a flop? I mean, I haven't taught in ages, and what if I let everyone down?" Alex's eyes held hers, a steady calm radiating from him. "You won't know until you try," he replied gently. "This workshop is as much about our growth as it is about theirs. We are not perfect, and that's the beauty of it. We can evolve together." His words hit deeper than she expected, igniting something within her. Perhaps the journey they were about to embark on was less about perfection and more about authenticity. The energy of their shared purpose bolstered her spirit as they finalized the framework for their workshop. Yet the undulating undercurrent of uncertainty persisted. Caroline knew there would be hurdles to navigate, moments of self-doubt that would test her resilience. Their partnership felt like a risk, one that could either lead to profound change or painful rejection. As their meeting drew to a close, Caroline felt an invigorating mix of hope and trepidation. They agreed to draft a detailed outline together in the coming days, each excited to contribute their insights. Just as she was about to gather her things, Alex hesitated, his brow etched with thought. "There's something else we need to discuss," he said, a shadow of seriousness passing over his features. "I think we need to prepare for potential backlash. Reaching out to people who have been silenced can bring its own set of challenges." Her stomach nodded at his words. The possibility of facing opposition was daunting, but deeper down, a defiant streak within her began to awaken. "We'll deal with it when we get there," she replied, her heart racing with a newfound determination. "But we can't let fear stifle our purpose." As Caroline left the cafe, the weight of doubt felt a little lighter, and the path ahead, while still unclear, shimmered with promise. In her mind, though, Alex's caution echoed. What if they encountered resistance that threatened to uproot everything they were about to create? Determination ignited inside her, pushing her forward into the unknown. Would she find the tenacity to face whatever came next? It was a mystery she was now more than willing to unravel. Caroline spent the next few days piecing together the workshop framework alongside Alex, a task that both thrilled and intimidated her. Each late-night session unfolded like a roller coaster ride, moments of high energy followed by spirals of self-doubt that came creeping in when she least expected them. They worked tirelessly, scribbling ideas, reworking outlines, and refining their vision. As they built it together, Caroline couldn't shake the feeling that steps were being laid out for something much, much bigger than a simple workshop. In the quiet moments between brainstorming sessions, Caroline's thoughts often drifted back to Alex's warning. While they were crafting a space meant to uplift voices, who were they to think that all would go smoothly? That trepidation nagged at her, intertwining with burgeoning excitement. It led her to seek out resources, articles, and even experts in trauma-informed practices. Each new piece of knowledge fortified her resolve, but between the gloom of doubt, Caroline unearthed flashes of confidence. She made discoveries about her own hidden capabilities. The way she could facilitate discussions, the ease with which she connected with others on sensitive topics, even her ability to encourage others to share in ways they perhaps had never considered. Each small victory was a revelation, a whisper telling her that maybe she did belong in this space. After all, one morning, while reviewing their plans over coffee, she suggested they include a pre-workshop session, a kind of meet and greet where everyone could introduce themselves without pressure. It'll set the tone, sort of like laying a foundation, she explained, her voice steady, fueled by an enthusiasm that had begun to bubble over. Alex agreed, nodding vigorously. Still, as their date approached, Caroline found herself spiraling again. The fear of failure loomed large, gnawing away at her confidence. Staring at her reflection in the mirror one afternoon, she questioned her readiness yet again, her thoughts racing. What if no one wanted to participate? What if they were all met with silence when they needed a chorus of encouragement? But the momentary panic served as a catalyst that propelled her into action. She reached out to a few trusted friends and mentors in the field. "What would you want from a workshop like this?" she asked, each conversation igniting her passion anew. Their enthusiasm fueled Caroline's commitment, refocusing her on the purpose she felt deep in her bones. The night before the workshop, as she tucked her favorite notebooks into her bag, she paused. It was then that she felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey hadn't merely been about preparing an event, it had transformed her. Here she was, on the precipice of something meaningful, confronting fears she hadn't even realized she carried. As she drifted off to sleep that evening, a sense of calm wrapped around her, easing her into a dream where laughter echoed and voices shared stories of resilience. However, beneath that peace sat an undercurrent of anxiety. She couldn't shake the feeling that when they opened the doors to the workshop, they were stepping into a whirlwind. The day dawned bright but brisk, the cool air invigorating as Caroline made her way to the venue. With each step, doubt battled with resolve, but Caroline's heartbeat echoed a steady rhythm of determination. "Here we go," she whispered under her breath as she turned the key in the lock. But hidden behind those words was an unspoken acknowledgement. What awaited them within those walls could change everything. And as she opened the door, Caroline had no way of knowing that the challenges about to arise would force her to confront not only her own fears but perhaps deeper truths about the power of resilience, both hers and that of those who would soon enter the room. Would she be ready when that moment arrived? The moment the door swung open, a gentle gust of wind swept through the room, rustling the carefully arranged chairs and scattering a few stray papers from her desk. Caroline stood at the threshold, a fragile symphony of excitement and trepidation bubbling within her. She inhaled deeply, anchored by the scent of freshly polished wood and muted fabric. In less than an hour, participants would trickle in, each one carrying their own story, their own burdens and, potentially, their hopes for transformation. Looking out across the space, she forced herself to visualize the unfolding connections, a tapestry woven from their shared experiences. The image propelled her forward, breathing life into her apprehension. But she hesitated. What if, amidst the layers of vulnerability being laid bare, her own insecurities came to light? A shiver traced her spine. This would be much more than a workshop. It was a crucible for personal trial. Caroline busied herself with last-minute preparations, straightening name tags and adjusting the placement of the water jugs on the tables, as if these mundane tasks could focus her nerves. She reminded herself of the insights gleaned from her research. Spaces of healing require a steady facilitator who leads not just with knowledge but with heart. She had prepared for this, hadn't she? Each meeting with mentors and every article read would come together like bricks in a wall, supporting something significant. As other organizers began to arrive, their excitement became palpable. Alex approached her with a wide grin, lifting a placard that read "Welcome." Caroline returned the smile, but felt the weight of expectation pressing heavier on her shoulders. In their excitement, she saw flickers of trust in their eyes, but lurking beneath her surface was the gnawing fear that her own voice might falter when it mattered most. Just then, a sound shattered her reverie, a soft whimper. Caroline turned to see a woman sitting alone at the back of the room. Her clothes hung loosely, her eyes sunken but sharp. She was trembling, clearly on edge. This was not the initial interaction Caroline had envisioned for the workshop. The woman seemed overwhelmed, lost in a world of her own making. Caroline swallowed hard, feeling the tension crystallize in her throat. It would be easy to brush past, to continue checking off her list of tasks, but something held her back. This moment felt significant. Caroline walked over, the distance shrinking with every step, her heart strumming a rhythm of compassion. "Hi there, I'm Caroline," she offered, her voice steady despite the storm swirling inside. The woman's gaze flickered up, apprehension mingled with the slightest hint of hope. "Are you okay?" Caroline continued, kneeling to her level, a gesture of solidarity. There was a depth in the woman's eyes that Caroline couldn't quite parse. It was a look of quiet suffering, perhaps echoing her own struggles. "I don't know if I can do this," the woman whispered, more to herself than to Caroline. Underneath the weight of her words, Caroline's heart sank. She recognized that sensation well, the suffocating grip of self-doubt. "You're not alone," Caroline interjected gently. "We're all here to share and listen. You have a voice, and it matters. No judgment, just connection." With those words, something shifted. Caroline felt the air around them buzz with a kind of potential she hadn't anticipated. In extending empathy, she tapped into a wellspring of strength. Her personal fears began to recede. Wasn't the purpose of this gathering to recognize the common threads of resilience that weave through pain? The woman met her gaze, tears welling in her eyes, a silent acknowledgement of shared vulnerability that reverberated through Caroline's own fears and doubts. It was a powerful realization. The workshop wasn't merely a structured event, but a transformative space for both Caroline and her participants. As people began to filter into the room, exchanging greetings and tentative smiles, Caroline's sense of purpose solidified. She would confront her fear head-on, not just for herself but for everyone who stepped through that door seeking solace in what they would create together. As she prepared to lead the opening circle, ready to extend her commitment to authenticity, something deep within Caroline shifted. The stakes had been elevated, and in that moment of connection, she realized the true power of being seen, the synergy of shared vulnerability. Yet a thought nagged at the edge of her awareness, teasing the boundaries of her confidence. What if this newfound courage was tested in ways she couldn't foresee? Caroline took a deep breath, ready to dive into the tempest of stories waiting to be shared. Soon, she would discover just how far the depths of her own resilience would stretch. Would she stand tall when faced with not only the burdens of others but also the skeletons in her own closet? Would she seize this moment of clarity when it mattered most? The room began to fill, a mosaic of faces reflecting the spectrum of human experience. Caroline took her place at the front, her heart racing, but she fought to maintain a calm demeanor. Each person who entered seemed to carry an invisible weight, and she felt their energies collide in the air around her. No longer was she simply a facilitator. She was navigating a labyrinth of emotions, and each participant was a crucial thread in this delicate weave. "Welcome, everyone," she started, her voice more confident than she felt. "Thank you for being here, for choosing to be vulnerable today. Let us create a space where we can share honestly and safely." As she spoke, Caroline felt a transformation begin. The initial tremor of fear subsided slightly. Each word was becoming an anchor against the tide of self-doubt. Yet, as she glanced at the woman at the back, now introduced as Sarah, Caroline could sense a deep-rooted anxiety still clinging to her. A part of her wanted to reach out again, to assure Sarah that her feelings were not only valid but shared. But Caroline also recognized the risk she could not inadvertently shift the focus away from others. This was their moment. She needed to guide her attention outward. As the opening circle commenced, each participant introduced themselves, sharing snippets of their lives. With every story, a raw honesty emerged, pain intermingled with hope. Caroline absorbed the weight of their words, each confession becoming a thread that tied her to them. A revelation dawned upon her. Despite her fears, she was not alone in this room. They were all facing their vulnerabilities together. Midway through the circle, Caroline invited everyone to reflect on what they wanted to achieve from the workshop. She noticed Sarah flinch at the invitation, her eyes darting. Caroline's heart ached at the sight. She could remember being in similar shoes, terrorizing her own voice. "Would anyone like to share?" Caroline prompted gently, making her way closer to Sarah. Taking a small step forward, Caroline continued, "It can help to speak our truths. Even just a word or two can open the door to something beautiful." As the sentiments washed over her, Caroline felt both trepidation and electric energy. She was challenging both herself and the others to break free from their collective fear. Finally, the silence broke when another attendee, a middle-aged man named David, spoke up about his struggle with self-worth and how it affected his relationships. His honesty ignited a domino effect. Participants began to layer more of their stories, interspersed with shared laughter, sorrow, and growing courage. And then, without realizing it, Caroline's own voice joined the cacophony of vulnerability. "I've been where you are. There were times I questioned my worth." Too, her heart raced as her emotions spilled out. yet in that moment she unleashed a part of herself that longed for validation. The collective silence that followed was not one of shock, but a deep acknowledgement of experiences shared. As the circle convened around these revelations, Caroline could feel the room transform. The air thickened with connection, and she felt a palpable strength surge through her. In glimpsing their courage, she began to understand the intricacies of her own. Yet lingering just beneath the surface was uncertainty. What repercussions would her openness have? Would sharing her struggles make her less effective as a facilitator? As the laughter and tears mingled in the circle, that nagging question clawed at her resolve. She had exposed only fragments of her soul, but what if the deeper, darker aspects of her journey were unveiled as well? As the closing circle approached, Caroline stood outside her comfort zone, contemplating one fundamental truth: personal growth seldom arises in safe zones. She could no longer separate herself from the group of seekers. The room pulsed with collective strength, but it also beckoned the hidden realms of her past. In that moment, determination washed over her. The time had come to face the truths simmering beneath her facade. Steeling herself, she prepared to embrace whatever lay ahead in this transformative journey, both for herself and for those gathered around her. Just as she summoned the courage to share her deeper story, another unexpected sound erupted: a crash outside followed by a distant scream. Caroline's heart slipped as panic rippled through the circle. What now awaited them on this unpredictable journey towards healing? The scream reverberated through the air, sharp and unsettling, cutting through the fragile atmosphere they had worked diligently to cultivate. Caroline paused, her breath caught in her throat, an instinctive response to the sheer volume of fear that invaded her space. A faint murmuring from the participants swirled around her as disbelief settled in like a thick fog, each face painted with confusion and concern. In that moment, Caroline's mind raced. She had summoned the courage to reveal parts of her own journey, yet now, the sudden chaos felt like a harsh reminder of the unpredictable nature of vulnerability. The room had just begun to pulse with shared authenticity, and now this scream threatened to unravel everything they had built. "Stay calm, everyone," Caroline urged, her voice steadier than she felt, as she turned toward the exit, where the commotion had erupted. It was imperative that she maintain a sense of authority, even as the ground beneath her feet momentarily wobbled. Each second felt elongated, stretching her willpower in the face of uncertainty. Around her, the participants shifted uncomfortably, anxiety rising with each uncertain glance shared. Caroline could almost sense them questioning her capability, her judgment, and whether she was truly equipped for the role she had assumed. "Let us take a moment to breathe," she suggested, realizing her words needed to anchor both her and them. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, willing herself to channel the same energy of empowerment that had flowed through the circle just moments ago. When she opened her eyes, determination shone within them. With every heartbeat affirming her presence in the room, she faced them again. "We are all here to support each other," she stated firmly. "What we share is important, and so is being brave enough to face whatever comes our way." Just then, the door swung open, and a figure stumbled into the room. It was a woman disheveled and pale, her clothes hanging loosely on her frail frame. The sound that had shattered their moment of connection was now embodied in her, a woman so ensnared in her own struggles that she appeared to have walked through the very gates of despair. Caroline felt her heart quicken, not just from the shock of the unexpected scene but also from the visceral pull of empathy that surged through her. The woman collapsed to the floor, the sound of her body hitting the wooden surface echoing hollowly in the stillness. "Someone call for help!" someone shouted, while others rushed hurriedly to her side. Caroline felt the weight of their gaze shift toward her, seeking her leadership in a moment where chaos loomed once more. She fought against the tumult within her, a conflict between her fear of inadequacy and her deep-rooted desire to assist. Instinct took over, guiding her steps toward the woman sprawled on the floor. Caroline knelt beside her, grasping the woman's trembling hand, feeling both paralyzed and propelled by the weight of her decision. "You're safe now," she whispered, locking eyes with this stranger who was, in a way, a mirror into the shadowed corners of her own past. The warmth of the woman's skin against her palm was a reminder of life's fragility. In that moment, the stakes shifted. This would no longer just be about sharing struggles. It was about extending compassion where it had been most sorely absent. Caroline could feel her own walls crumbling, though fear still clung to the edges of her mind. "Let us focus on her," Caroline called out, trying to rally the participants. "We need to help." But as she witnessed the rapid transformation of the room from introspective sharing to a raw fight for this woman's well-being, Caroline also felt the stirrings of a new resolve within her. Perhaps this unexpected interruption was exactly what she needed. It was just her story that required sharing. It was a broader narrative, one that intertwined the lives of strangers seeking hope. In the heart of chaos, a question emerged in Caroline: could this be a moment of profound change for everyone, including herself? But as sirens wailed in the distance, she knew that this journey was only beginning. There were still depths of her own truth left to uncover, and the unfolding drama promised to lead her toward revelations she could hardly fathom. What latent strength lay dormant within her yet to be awakened? And then, in the silence that followed, another scream echoed in the distance, shattering the fragile calm once more. As Caroline knelt next to the woman, she could feel the pulse of urgency surrounding her, an intricate dance of fear and resolve threading through the room. The intensity of the moment stirred something deep within her, awakening the courage that had been dormant since her own struggles began. She took a breath, focusing on the task at hand. This was not merely a workshop, it was a lifeline for both the participants and herself. "Let us get her some water," Caroline directed a few attendees who instinctively rushed to the woman's side. "And keep her calm." "You're okay, you're going to be okay," she assured the woman, squeezing her hand tightly. When her eyes met the frightened gaze of the stranger, something shifted inside her soul. She remembered panic. She remembered suffocating in the shadows of her own despair. But now, here, she felt the tightness in her chest dissolve slightly just by being present for someone else. As the sirens wailed closer, Caroline stood, grounding herself in the immediate needs of the group and that of the woman on the floor. Each moment of chaos, every whisper of fear, pounded against the walls she built around her heart, but she wouldn't shrink back. Instead, something essential clicked into place, a promise she made to herself when she decided to take this leap into teaching again. This was about connection. "Everyone, let us take a moment to breathe together," she called out, her voice resonating with newfound authority. "Inhale deeply and exhale the fear. We are in this together." The participants rallied, intertwining their breaths, forging a bond in the face of unpredictability. The atmosphere began to shift as they anchored themselves in unity. When the paramedics arrived, Caroline stepped aside but did not falter. She watched as they attended to the fallen woman, reassured by their expertise. There was nothing she could do here now but trust in the collective action, a reflection of the very lessons she had sought to impart. Caroline recalled the initial spark ignited in her from Alex's call, the conversation where wanting to inspire had blossomed into a collaborative mission. She now understood the authenticity of their journey, that it thrived not in control and predictability, but in vulnerability, and the power of shared experiences. As the paramedics lifted the woman onto a stretcher, Caroline felt a swell of pride. She had witnessed fear transform into collective strength, a metamorphosis she only dreamed would happen. In that single, overwhelming moment, she realized she had conquered a significant layer of her own self-doubt. She wasn't merely facilitating the workshop, she was living it. Later that evening, wrapped in the fatigue of the day, Caroline and Alex debriefed their experiences. They shared laughter punctuated with awe as they recounted the chaotic moments that had defined the workshop. Alex's voice was filled with admiration as he spoke. "You held space for everyone. I've never seen someone manage their own fears while navigating others like that." Caroline's heart swelled with gratitude. Recognition from those around her ignited a solid confidence she had only begun to claim. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady, "but I finally realized it's not about perfection. It's about being present, connecting to one another's realities." The transformation was palpable. The conversation glided effortlessly between reflection and dreams, between past pains and future possibilities. Caroline felt the lingering threads of her own journey interwoven with those she now aimed to uplift. Weeks later, standing in front of a larger group at their first official workshop, Caroline looked out at the participants and smiled, her heart full. They had shaped a community, a nexus of hope and resilience anchored in authenticity. With her fears slowly evaporating, she embraced the weight of her role, strengthened by the clarity of purpose that had transformed her life. Still, it was not just about personal achievement anymore. It was about manifesting the dreams they shared. And as Caroline explained the morning's theme of healing through storytelling, she was overcome by gratitude for every step that had led her here, the victories, the hurdles, and all the moments of humility and connection. "I'm proud to be part of this journey with you," she declared, and as she glanced back at Alex, their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, both changed forever by the vulnerabilities they had embraced. As they wrapped the session, Caroline felt compassion swell within her for her journey. She was not only a survivor, she was an architect of change. As she stepped into the sunlight outside, her back straight and spirit buoyant, she understood this was just the beginning. She had proven to herself that hope could rise from despair, that giving space for stories could indeed weave the fabric of human resilience. And with that realization, she was ready to charge forward unflinchingly into the next chapter, her narrative intertwined with the lessons learned, her voice steady and her heart still open. Now is your chance to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread the message. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.